galleon-style ship out there, kind of maybe similar to the Portuguese rolled up in. So around this area is well, to this day still is the Nagasaki port, and that's where those early Portuguese settlements, people coming in here. There's a better view of the old style ship. Has a Japan flag on there. Cool bridge out there too. The history, Portuguese pulling in the 1500s, 1560s, 1580s. Their first church that was built probably was around here somewhere, long gone. Here was the port, probably port for thousands of years before that, even with Chinese traders and everything. But imagine the long journey from Goa, India, even further from Portugal to around Africa to Goa to Malacca to Macau, then to here. What a crazy lifestyle that would be in those times. Obrigado. All right, let's go check out the Portuguese islands. So remember, Portuguese had their time, but it got a little crazy. Like this 26 people that were killed here from all kinds of countries. There's even a boy. Mostly Portuguese and Japanese, but some people from other places like Italy and Spain and Korea came to Nagasaki to be Catholic priests. So this is the monument of the 26 martyrs that in 1597, two popes came here to document this. 1597, as they were getting cracked down on. Anti-Christian stances began ramping up. They were killed here. The thing burned. Oh, jeez. Right, so this is where all Europeans were banished to in contact with Japan. It's a restoration of Dejima Island. And 1636, the shogun said, all Portuguese gotta go in here, can't leave. Can't go throughout the city or anywhere else in Japan. But this actually only lasted 3 years because of all the troubles Christians were causing Catholics around Japan. There was a few more rebellions or something like that. They expelled the Portuguese forever from Japan, never to return. The island was constructed by the Tokugawa shogunate, whose isolationist policies sought to preserve the existing socio-political order by forbidding outsiders. Cathedral, the Portuguese were around here, so a lot of people, Catholic actually, most in all of Japan, but here it's a collection of stuff from the original that obviously was blown up pretty bad. Mary and Jesus standing strong, though that one lost its head. Crazy. Yeah, the bomb went off like right over there, the center, so the shockwave and fire was really close to here. A pretty nice cathedral, rebuilt from the original. The good old story of Jesus up there. Yeah, we're in Japan. A big organ. Whoa. Nice stained glass. Oh man, cool. This cathedral doubly interesting because Nagasaki is the most Catholic place and Christian place in Japan. And that's because of the Portuguese history. And also this is a rebuild of the original cathedral that they're really happy to build because the restrictions of Christianity ended. But then the original part, 1945. The ruin of the old church that they rebuilt from 1873 to 1915. And when it was destroyed, I saw some stuff in the museum. They were super happy to finally be able to build a church after the bans on Christianity were uplifted. People were underground Christians for hundreds of years after Portuguese times here. So the community came together. Hey, there's John Paul the Pope. Community came together to build a cathedral here. Finally fit the bell towers were finished in 1915, and then in 1945 the cathedral was destroyed. And it said in there 12,000 parishioners, which I guess is the community that came to church every Sunday around here, the Urukami region. 8,500 of them died because the center of the bombing was like right here. There's some room from the old church. Crazy. Portuguese Nagasaki. Catholic Nagasaki. So, Nanban, or southern barbarians, or what the people were called from southern China, Southeast Asia, or the Indian Ocean, or anywhere else. So this included the Portuguese, who were the first Europeans to come to Japan ever on accident. They landed on an island off of Kyushu 1543 when some of their trading ships heading to Canton, China were blown off course, landing on an island near Nagasaki. After that, traders and missionaries began arriving to Kyushu, including Saint Francis Xavier. I seen him in the cathedral in Goa, India, and we learned about this history also in Malacca, Malaysia. And here, it was all connected. The Portuguese history of all these places. Why am I in all these places? I don't know. But it comes from the 1500s. I'm not Portuguese. I got no connection to Portugal. But I know a lot about their colonial history. So, yeah. The Portuguese were the first, and for a long time, the only Europeans allowed into Japan. Let's see what's over here. So, I guess fast forward, I'm going to tell the history a little bit. Let's fast forward to 1800s to 1945. So, for a long time, Christianity was outlawed in the Edo period. And once the Meiji Restoration started and opening up of Japan, Christianity and other Western things were allowed again, including the Catholics here, who were forced underground for hundreds of years, from like 1600 to 1873, when they got themselves together and built this. Got themselves together, put together money, and had this built. So this was all Japanese Catholics built. But as you can see, this was the original pieces of it. This is where the original was. 1945, atomic bomb was very close to here and destroyed the original. Here's some pieces of it. These are the cranes. Oh, that's what these are. Those are the peace cranes. So then in 1959 they had it rebuilt, and it's a special spot for many reasons. Portuguese history, the banning of, which include massacres of Christians over those hundreds of years of the Edo period, then the atomic bombing and rebuild. 1995 to 1915 build. Let's go back to the 1500s. So, after 1543, missionaries, trade, and cultural exchange, including the introduction of matchlock firearms, cannons, galleon-style shipbuilding, and Christianity was all introduced to Japan for the first time. So you know those samurais, they love their swords, but when these warlords and stuff first saw guns and cannons, they were like, we got to get some of those. So they welcomed the Portuguese, and it was a time of civil war in Japan. So So trade started from here between Goa, Malacca, two other places I went in the past year, and Canton, Guangzhou, which was the only place foreigners were allowed to trade in China, and Nagasaki. So a trade between Goa, India, Malacca, which is now Malaysia, Canton, Guangzhou, China, and Nagasaki, Portuguese port. In 1550, it was made a crown monopoly, and also in 1550, instead of having to go through Canton, Guangzhou, the Portuguese purchased Macau from the Ming Dynasty China with pure silver, and the Chinese love silver, so they ceded the territory of Macau to the Portuguese, which it was a colony for over 500 years, I think. All right, back to Nagasaki. 1550, Nagasaki was made a crown monopoly, so to facilitate the trade between Japan and China, which didn't really have that good of trade relations. So they acted like as a middleman between Macau and here, Nagasaki. Because of the trade embargoes the Chinese had with the Japanese. And also Japan was in a state of civil war and with samurai warlords, vying for control of different areas. So Portuguese also benefited from that. Different lords and different, divided states weakened. And the unloading of the black ships was a well-documented event. That's what the Japanese called the Portuguese when they pulled up. The men with the black ships with magic, things. Maybe they didn't say it like that, but things they'd never seen, like guns and cannons and silks from China and all this nice stuff that it was hard for them to get. And especially the trading for guns, the first the Japanese ever seen. So in 1562, the lord of the area, first ever event like this in Japan, the lord of the region around Nagasaki, right around here, down there, but all around me, converted to Catholicism. First time ever that happened. And so a bunch of his, citizens living around also did. They liked that trade with Portugal, and like other places, if you became Catholic too, the Portuguese were like, yeah, you're our best buddies. And you benefited from that. And as you see, it was very influential, man. And all these places, Goa, Malacca, here, Japan, sure in Macau too. Brazil is another place I haven't been, but Portuguese really stamped in believers for forever, generations, which is crazy. But this angered many around Japan that were staunch Buddhists, and there were some Buddhist rebellions. The Buddhism, rather peaceful, monks and things like that, but there were some rebellions of Buddhists against this new foreign religion. And in 1571, that same lord, 9 years later after converting, fearing his lands would be taken over by another lord, he would lose it, he ceded the area to the Jesuits. Nagasaki was pretty much a Portuguese colony. Blah, 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 blah. Yes, and all other Christians all around Japan that were mostly in Kyushu, actually, mostly Catholics too, all others fled to other areas and came here. And a cathedral was built for St. Paul, just like in Malacca and Goa, St. Paul Cathedral. 1971, it was like a little Portuguese and Japanese Christian enclave, but it was still ruled by that lord. You know, it wasn't technically a colony, but in 1580 it was made official. The lord here changed his name to a Christian name too, like Bartholomew or something, which is interesting. He gave the whole city over to the Jesuits, the Portuguese. So it was a Portuguese colony just for 7 years, until 1587. But as clans fought over the area, the first anti-Christian edict ended the Jesuit control of the city. But it still remained a Portuguese port of trade. But we're going to go down to the area next where the Portuguese were limited to, and things started getting intense in the Edo period. But still signs of some interesting things here, and still a Catholic cathedral. And so around the 1590s, 1597, this happened. All these 26 people were killed on the spot, I think burned alive or beheaded by samurais' swords. It started getting intense. Oh man, the guy's drilling. So, between 1597 and 1637, 1637, here's a list of all the people that were killed here for being Catholic. Holy crap. There's at least, I don't know, 300 names maybe? 1,000 names? Hard to tell, but it has their country of birth and their name in English and Japanese. A lot from Japan, but Portugal, Italy, Korea, Spain, Belgium, India. Whoa. Goa, probably. Who was the guy from Goa? Gonzalo Garcia. Oh, that was the first 26 were all made saints. Wow, that were martyred here. He was one of them. Japan, Philippines, Portugal, Mexico. Wow. Man, just getting killed by the shogunate's people. And in Japanese about the Portuguese and Nagasaki history, going from 1532 to 1597. Maybe Japanese history. I thought it was 1548 was the first contact. It's in Japanese though. I might have to translate that, but that was all that stuff I was just talking about at that church. Portugal was getting a lot of converts and had their whole trade set up here in Nagasaki. But yeah, the Lord lost his power in the region, and the Tokugawa shogunate started taking over all of Japan, taking out all the little lords, foreigners, and any foreign influence, especially Christianity, was heavily persecuted in Japan in favor of more traditional beliefs like Shinto and Buddhism. Time of the end of Western influence and isolationism of Japan, the Portuguese, because they had a wealthy beneficial thing to the Japanese going on with their trade of silks from China and the guns and everything. They were the only Europeans allowed into Japan at the port in Nagasaki, which is down there, which I'm going to in a second. But because of the heavy crackdowns on Catholicism, there was many rebellions that took place in the city, and many people were executed because of their beliefs into the 1600s. And we just saw the list of all those people. But yes, there was countless rebellions. So in 1636, the shogun made a decision to isolate the Portuguese and the spread of Christianity to anywhere in Japan. This was the execution site of Christians. Anyways, that's where I'm going to go next. Interesting historical place going on next. Portugal history. I document you a lot, actually. Maybe I should go to Portugal. Maybe it's a sign. Couple boys, altar boys, Japanese and Portuguese, killed here. Oh man. But Portuguese did kill a lot of people in their colonial conquests, so you know. I don't know about in Japan actually, but they were Catholics were having some rebellions, and so actually this is about someone's life that was murdered here. P. Louis Frois. He was born in 1532. God, construction. And it says he went to Goa, then went to different places in Japan, including Osaka Castle and Kyoto, where he met the leaders there, and then came back. You know, a bunch of other stuff happened to him. He was writing the history of Japan, which is kind of cool. And he came back to Nagasaki. He was a Jesuit priest or something. And in 1597, he was one of the guys, 26 killed on this spot. Here's part of the story I didn't know. After being arrested for violation of Toyotomi Hideyoshi's ban on Christianity, they were brought to Nagasaki from the Osaka-Kyoto area. 6 foreign missionaries and 20 Japanese Catholics were crucified on this hill, February 5th, 1597. So they were crucified, is how they were killed, just like their Savior put on a cross. That's brutal. It's like the Romans. Where the Koreans did a bunch of massacres of Christians too. I think Chinese also. Through hills and intense history. I had to stop and get a Heartland beer. What's that? Side beer, just a crazy looking church actually. Some bacon sandwich, really good. Wow. Arigato. Very cool. Very used trains too. All those troubles the Christians were causing for the shogunate, supposedly, and all those rebellions and executions and everything. He made the decision, 1636, banish all Christians and Portuguese to this spot, which was a man-made island. They reclaimed a bunch of land, and the port was right here where the Portuguese had been coming in for, almost about 100 years. So they said, oh, that would be perfect. They can still do their shipping and bring us the stuff we like and do their business, bring stuff from China, bring stuff from India, but they have to stay here. And to do that, they thought, we would stamp out Christianity, Catholicism would stop spreading throughout Japan. And that's where they were brought, right here, 1636, Portuguese, all banished to this spot. Not allowed to leave, not allowed to enter unless you're a Portuguese trader. So, or a Japanese Christian, I think, Catholic. So, yeah, no other Europeans, no French, no British, nobody else was allowed over here, except, no other foreigners except Chinese had their own spot down the way a little bit, which we're gonna go look at next. Likely where the spot, you could kind of see it down below down there, of Nagasaki Harbor was, before they reclaimed some land and moved it, I think, over there a little bit to see. Yeah, it's over there a little ways. I kind of want to see that, but first, our next part of our history. Oh wow, a Dutch flag is still flying right there in Netherlands. So we're gonna go in here and tell them. See the old dock down there. That's crazy. It's under a little bit of water now. This river. All right, this should be interesting. I don't know where the sea is because of the mountain over there, but actually the sea touches right over there somewhere. I was wrong. It's not that way. But yeah, the rugged coast of Kyushu are very interesting. How they go in and out, all these bays and everything. Actually, all Japan's like that. Modern Dejima. Date I'm looking for 1550. Portuguese had a monopoly of this port. So 1550s, 1560s, 70s, 80s, Catholicism was spreading around a little bit. The Lord here converted in the 1562. The church for Saint Paul, the Portuguese built around here somewhere. I'm sure there might be a ruin or something. Who knows? But wow, look at the sun rays going out there towards the open South China Sea or whatever it is, Eastern Sea. Man, crazy history. So yeah, this port still remained the main port of Portuguese trade. But into the Edo period, the 1600s, with all that trouble we talked about, the Catholics and everything, the shogun decided to banish them over there. We're going to go there next and talk about that story. The Portuguese and all Christian Catholics were banished to this area, right over there, a man-made island, Dejima. Even though the ships, Portuguese trade was still allowed to come in only to that spot. The only foreigner, only European, only foreigner other than Chinese, which also had a similar situation in their area. That's a different video. Bye! Side note on the port, a lot of Japanese naval ships, World War II, were built here. Probably because of the easy access to their lands they're conquering, like China over there. They're trying to conquer Shanghai. Is basically right down that way. Straight ahead, first thing you hit, Shanghai, China. Wow, not that far away. China's close by. Thanks for the music. The Dutch flag up there, Netherlands. Portuguese, this was built for as the only allowed Western contact with Japan. But that didn't last long. And it switched out to the Dutch. It went on for a pretty long time, actually. We're gonna learn about that in a second. I don't know if these buildings look pretty old, some of them. I don't know if they suffered any damage from bombing or their recreation. Kind of far from the bomb site. I don't know. Let's see what's going on up there. Alright, the island was constructed by the Tokugawa shogunate, whose isolationist policies sought to preserve the existing socio-political order by forbidding outsiders from entering Japan while prohibiting most Japanese from leaving. Dejima housed Portuguese merchants and separated them from Japanese society while still facilitating lucrative trade with the West. Portuguese. But following another rebellion by mostly Catholic converts, which I just said, the Portuguese were expelled forever. 1639. So, enter the Dutch. The Dutch, with their Asian colonial capital of Batavia in Java, Indonesia. There's the Netherlands flag there. So the Dutch had a little trading post on a small island off of Kyushu that they were somehow allowed to go to, even in this period. Ooh, hello, buddy. Konnichiwa. But the Dutch were forcibly in 1641 moved here, which was Japan's only contact with the West. Any European, anyone other than a few Chinese too, all the way until 1859. So the Dutch had even stricter controls than the Portuguese ever had. Isolated to this island. There's a recreation of a Dutch Protestant church maybe, or city hall. And the open practice of Christianity was totally banned. And interactions between Dutch and Japanese traders were tightly regulated. They could barely even talk to each other. From 1641 on, only the Dutch and Chinese ships were allowed to come to Japan. And Nagasaki Harbor was the only one they were allowed to enter. Any other ship from anywhere else was turned away or worse. The Netherlands, also around this time, had a colony in Taiwan, Tainan, that they lost 20 years later after being moved here. And of course they had their holdings in Indonesia. But yeah, Christianity was completely banned. And you know, the Dutch, the Netherlands, they weren't so hardcore Catholic, you know, as the Portuguese. They were Protestant, I think. So yeah, they were the only Western contact, limited access and trade or technology just to this island for anyone in Japan for centuries. Other than the Chinese, that's the next video. But not that many Chinese. Until the arrival of the gunships from the US and Commodore Perry. The United States Navy forced Japan to open in 1858, which changed everything. And I'm sorry, 1854, and then Japan began opening up and the Dutch just left in 1850. The Dutch also held Malacca like the Portuguese once did also. So, and you know, European colonialism times into the 1700s, 1800s. Not my favorite kind of history, but so we won't tell too much of that. Let's look at the wharf though. Only point of Western contact right here between Japan and pretty much the entire outside world for hundreds of years, over 200 years. This old Dutch style church, it looks pretty old, or else maybe they're just good at making things look old. Pretty sure this area was messed up. About this is there's a UNESCO World Heritage sites around here, mostly on small islands and tiny caves and stuff like that around the Nagasaki region. I don't know where the nearest one is. They seem hard to find, but it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site of the hidden Christian sites of Nagasaki, because the Christians that did stay Christian went into hiding. Catholic, not Protestant Christian or anything. Catholics, they went into hiding to practice their faith still, not to be executed like lots of people were on this spot. I had a revelation about you. So you're 1/4 Japanese, 25%, and show your face. We don't know where. We looked it up, tried to figure out where they came from. All we know is they lived in Guam Island, Japanese living in Guam. But strangely, they had they didn't have Japanese names. They had Spanish, Portuguese type of names like Bautista and stuff like that. And a lot of those Japanese people born in Japan changed their name to Christian names from their Japanese names on that martyrs list over there. Whoa, look at that crazy statue. So the furthest I could go back with them was like in the late 1700s. So possibly they were Japanese Christians that left during the Edo period when it was the isolationist and anti-Christian, and they fled to Spanish-held Guam from Japan. That's totally possible.